So let's have a quick look at the demographics. The people who are playing, the people who are buying the product, and the people who are getting involved in the hobby. It seems to me that GW are trying to market much of their product towards a very much younger audience.
Yeah, it feels like they want everything sold in Toys R Us nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, if you go back to like the original Rogue Trader, which came out in the late 80s, again, I'm not too sure on the exact date. I remember playing some of these games. Just to let you know, I'm not that old to play them first time round, but I did play them a few editions ago. There was like differences in them. For instance, the way the orcs worked were very, very different in the fact that there was a lot more randomization about them, which made them truly what they are. Orcs are meant to be random, not like a small chart in the back of a book somewhere. Completely and utterly random in the way they would work. Chaos was a brilliant one, not one for the religious person to play. I mean, it was all about summoning demons on the opposite side of the battlefield, having your sorcerer die, and then just letting this demon run loose. Or Slaneshi demons run across the battlefield. At this moment of time, I'd like to interject that you wasn't allowed to take your models off the field. If they died, you just laid them down because they became terrain. But if a Slaneshi demon passed within so many inches, you'd have to make rolls for them to see if they would continue to fight or to, let's say, slay and be disturbed with them. It's probably the best way I can describe it.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you look at Slanesh as a thing, it's excess. That was the whole concept of it. It was the whole excess.
I see it's primal as well, in the fact that the two main primal things for a human to do is to eat and procreate. That's our two primal things, really.
Well, that's
you
very
stick
true.
a little bit of combat in there as well, and boom, you've got the entire trifecta. And that's the way I've always seen Slanesh. And I don't think that really has much in the modern day GW. I heard rumours they were trying to get rid of it.
Well, see, this is something that I would be quite disappointed in, because I always thought it would be nice to have a Slanesh army. One thing I really liked was the demonettes from before, not the current ones, but the ones previous. That they had a very sleek, very athletic, very voluptuous figure.
They also had their tits out, if I remember correctly.
Well, yes, but that's neither here nor there, is it? I'm a bard. I'm not a monk. But yeah, these models, they actually were modelled to look like what they're supposed to represent, and that was this concept of excess, this concept of sensuality. And I think in trying to market their product to a younger audience, they're basically saying, well, we should really get rid of this thing, this kind of adult theme. We should take some of our previous things, like, say, Space Marines or Tau, and kind of really chuck them on the good guy side of the spectrum.
Because they look safe.
Well, yeah.
It's like you said, the demonettes look like Kelly Brook if she started an Exorcist, But the new stuff, it doesn't. And yeah, you're right. Tau, well, let's be absolutely honest with you. They've only got one female figure in the Tau army that I can presently think of. The rest of them are just clad blue things.
Because you used to be a Tau collector, didn't you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. And then they became too powerful and I refused to play them anymore.
And that's what I think happens when you have more mature gamers. You get players who want to play things that are a little bit reserved, like, say, Dark Elder, for example, or they prefer orcs because, they have low armor and just can be wild, or even, say, Tyranids, for example, because they work in hordes, but again, there's got to be a lot of things that are shot up. But then you get...
Do you know my theory behind Tyranids? They're all alcoholics. Seriously, they devour anything to get to the next drink. And and one drink's never enough. I'm sure they're alcoholics.
I'm sure they are. But it's kind of true, though. I mean, you have, say, your Tau and your Space Marines and your Eldar, and they're the good guys, and the good guys need to be powerful. Now, again, I'll use the Dark Elder comparison here, but I find that Dark Elder should be the fastest thing in the universe. It should be the fastest thing on the board. You look at the rules.
They're the fastest thing to die.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as a Dark Elder player, I noticed them get wiped off the board quite quickly. But then again, they can be good if played right. But again, we're not going to go into the mechanics of the game. What we want to look at is basically how it reflects. And you have something that is supposed to be the fastest thing there is, like literally Quicksilver fast, and yet the good guys, the Eldar, are actually technically faster if you look at their rules. Obviously, we're not going to go into their rules in obviously for a fair use policy, but for those people who are aware, the people who have played it, it seems to be at the moment very good guy biased, whereas before there wasn't any of that because there was no good guys.
Yeah, I mean, and it's exactly the same with the Marines stroke Chaos Marines. There seems to be no difference in it. It was always said that the Chaos Marines were fanatics, that they had very, very unusual demonic weaponry, which what they brought to bear was devastating.
Hmm.
That has kind of gone off the pot
It's
as of
dropped
late.
off, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it seems now that the Marines, with all their updates they keep having, are just getting more and more powerful. But I've got a friend who plays Chaos religiously, and he's been turning around to me and saying that he doesn't care about them anymore. They're not what they should be. And he's never been a person to be a power player. He doesn't care if he wins or loses. He just likes an enjoyable game. But he bought the latest codex, actually, the latest Demon Codex, which came out a couple of months ago, I think it did. And he played them once, said he can't ever foresee him playing them again. They're just a shadow of what they once were. And you want to at least think you've got a fair chance.
Mm.
And I think that's the problem we're now facing. The minute someone puts Eldar down on the board, the other person picks up and walks away. Have the point, because it's just not worth it. You don't want to get devastated every single time. It seems like a waste of time even rolling a dice.
So then when you go ahead and put something like, say, Attack Wing in front of someone and say, here's your side, here's my side, here's, a game that's really balanced, play it, try it out. And everyone says, yeah, this is a really balanced game. This is one of those things that, everyone can kind of get on board with, and very, very quickly as well.
Quickly and cheaply, I might add. When I first started playing, I got into Star Trek Attack Wing, first off. I didn't know anyone that played or anything, and I just bought a few bits and bobs, found there were some sites on Facebook, and I've made friends out of it. I honestly have made friends. I mean, I talk to people all over the country now, sometimes all over the world. I've got a very nice person that we do some... There's lots of buying and selling groups on Facebook as well, and
Yeah.
most of these are really, really good, especially when it comes to these small hobbies. I've only been burnt once. But as I was saying, there was I got into that and I thought, you know what? I'll have a jump over to X-Wing to see what it's like. Everyone's raving about it. It seems quite good. The rules are pretty much identical. I'd like to just add, Fancy Flight, who makes X-Wing, sold their rights, or leased, should I say, their rights to WizKids. So it's pretty much the same rules, but it is actually quite a different game. But so I thought I'll jump over to X-Wing, knowing that I know Star Trek. And I went onto a couple of the Facebook forums and said, well, what should I collect? I mean, knowing, being a very, very old GW player, they'll say, well, what army do you want? And then get this, and this, because it's the most powerful, it's the only things you can really play. There's a lot of things in the codex you wouldn't even touch, let's be fair.
Yeah.
The first thing I was told is, buy what you want.
Really?
Yeah, just buy what you want. I was like, well, does that make sense? I said, I want to get like the Millennium Falcon, and I want to get some A-Wings. I go, well, then buy them. Because anything can be playable.
It's as simple as that. Just whatever takes your fancy, whatever aesthetic you like,
Yeah.
whatever theme you want to go with, it doesn't matter. Just roll with it.
Just roll it. There's only 3 groups at the moment in X-Wing. That's Scum and Villainy, that's Imperial, and that's Rebellion. But I'm a Rebellion player personally, but buying ships of the other of one of the other 2 groups,
Factions?
yeah, I couldn't think of my words. Isn't actually a bad idea, because they do have some cards which work in yours. Some are like very, very faction specific, others aren't. So there's a couple of them, yeah, buy a few of them. And you know what, I know it's a little bit sneaky of them, but you start buying these, think, maybe I fancy giving these tries. So you go off and you start buying that faction as well. But there's nothing making you do it. Now, I have spent probably more than I should on X-Wing, and I think I've spent about £150 to £180 total.
Well, you say that that's more than you should, but to me that doesn't seem anywhere near as bad as, say, a GW product. Now, if you want a good quality army to put on the table, you're looking at twice that.
Oh, and then some, I reckon, yeah. When you think an average character costs you like 15 to 20 quid now.
Yeah, I've got some character models. Just they're not special characters. They're just basic HQ choices, such as archons and succubi. But I think the GW price is about 15 to 16 pounds ish. The irony of it is, of course, is that there are people who are actually going to other places for their purchases.
Which I've done a lot. I know a couple of internet shops which sell them for like 20% off. Actually, funny story. I went into my local GW a while back when I was still collecting and playing quite heavily, and the person said, "Oh, I don't recognise you. You know, the manager." And I said, "To be fair, I never come in. So, are you interested in it?" I said, "I've been interested in it since I was knee high to a grasshopper, as it were, and yeah, I'm still an avid collector now." "Oh, so why don't you come in?" I said, "Because it's cheaper to get them online." "Oh, but you should support your local shop," he told me. I said, "To be fair, I'd rather support my bank manager."
Rather support your bank balance.
Yeah, I mean, I
No.
can't. I mean, 20% off. Let's say an X-wing model, which I said before. Let's say it's £12.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's £2.40.
Yep.
Okay, so that takes it to £9.60. Okay, that's not a massive saving. Let's be fair, it's only £2 odd. But if I went and bought a Land Raider, and I don't know the price of them now, but let's say they're about 50 quid, because it wouldn't surprise me if they're about that now. It might even be more expensive. I have no idea.
Well, let's look at this in this perspective. Let's quantify it this way. You've got a single model, which is £15, £16,
Yeah,
and then you've got a tank. I mean, plastic for plastic. Let's.
that's it. But let's just say it's a £50 model, and let's just say it's a Land Raider. I don't know the prices of them,
Yeah, that's fine.
but let's just say it is. And you save 20% on that, it takes a tenner off it.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're thinking and you never just buy one model. Let's be honest with you. You know, you buy a few.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, you want to take advantage of the postage and packing, don't you? Because
Exactly.
you think to yourself, well, if I'm going to pay to have them delivered, I might as well get a bulk of them. If
And
they're all 20% off and it costs just as much to deliver one model as it does to deliver five, deliver me five.
then you club together with your friends a bit, and you put like a £500 order in between like four of you or whatever, and you think, Jesus, I just saved £100 then of
Yeah.
what I would be paying if I walked into my local GW store. I get they've got overheads. I get that they do have overheads, but shouldn't that would be accounted for somewhere?
Well, I don't quite understand their reasoning and their logic, and we're getting back onto the pricing here. We're actually supposed to be talking about the demographic, but we'll come back to that. When it comes to the pricing, you've got models. You literally, like as I said, you've got a character. What is it? 24mm base? Yeah, 24mm base model, and this character, this one thing that you're using to lead your army. Why is it so expensive?
It doesn't need to be.
And then you have the options to have at least two.
Yeah,
30 quid for two models, which has a points equivalent of what?
and then
Maybe 100 at best if you're fully equipped.
yeah, and then you always want a bit of a change, so you'll never just buy the two just in case you're playing something different. Like you said, we're getting back onto the price thing again, and maybe it's subconscious. Maybe that's the reason that this is happening across the entire world. Maybe they are outpricing themselves out of this market.
Perhaps what they could do is because like I said, you could charge half the price, maybe like 8 quid for like a character style model. But if you were to say half the price of everything, I think not only would you get back a lot of those players you've lost, they wouldn't just buy twice as much, they'd probably buy 3 times as much. I think they would actually make more money by lowering
I
prices.
think they probably would. I honestly do. I mean, I can't see a reason they wouldn't, and I can't see a reason they won't give it a try. Right, so I just got kicked in the shin to talk about demographic again because I went completely off topic.
It's understandable.
Um, like we're saying about with GW, it seems like they're aiming it more towards a child market. I think I'm not going to say like X-wing is a solely adult market, but I think there's definitely room for a lot more age groups in there.
Right.
Um, most of the tournaments are adults. You see that a lot. You get the occasional teenager and that kind of thing, or young teen, should I say. But most of them are of an adult level because it seems to be they're not pocket money players anymore. You know?
No.
They're people that go out, earn a living, come home, pay the bills, make sure that that wives, husbands, children are fed as it were, and the little bit of money they got left, they seem to buy something every now and then. and that's the way I think that it's now working. They've not turned to pocket money; they've turned more into a little bit of dispensable income that you may have or you may not have.
Because I mean, as you were saying before, you can pick up what is it, a basic, say, starter kit for
But
attack wing for about 25
about
notes.
25 quid, yeah.
Okay, so you extrapolate this out. You have a maybe say like a five or a spare at the end of the week. You can chuck that in a pot, and then by the end of the month, you can say, well, I've got 20 notes, 25 quid perhaps. I can afford to buy X model or Y model or Z model, or even like maybe a couple. At which point, then you can really start to experiment with. Whereas when you have a product like GW, you've got a problem here in the sense of it costs literally that amount of money will buy you maybe an elite squad, or it might get you, let's say, a vehicle of some description. But that vehicle serves a single purpose. Whereas at least with these other models, you get maybe more. You get like two or three, or like say a whole starter set if you want to start. And there's a lot more, say, availability, and there's a lot more variety that you can do.
Yeah, it does. It gives you a bit of, it's variance at the end of the day of what you can do with your cash. Um, I I don't like the fact that you have to buy X amount before you start.
Yeah, that's one of those things that's just going to it puts people off. People want to get into the hobby, especially when they're young, like say again GW, because their friends are doing it, and their friends were doing it because their friends were doing it, and of course and you think, well, I want to collect this, and then of course you go into GW and you talk to the guy behind the counter, and he or she says, okay, you want to do this, so therefore you need this to start, you need this model to start, you need these squads to start, you need this book to start, and then you need the games and the paints and the brushes and the glue and the scalpels and all that kind of stuff. And before you know it, you've spent so much.
Changing the subject, mate. You're going
I've
back.
gone back onto pricing. I'm
You go to
sorry.
pricing this time. I'm going to go back over to the
Back over to
demographic.
demographics.
I remember going to a lot of veterans nights at GW stores. Now, as far as I'm concerned, especially down this neck of the woods, they don't exist anymore. I've never seen a veterans night in the past, 5 years, I reckon.
Well, for those gamers out there who are kind of new to GW, or those who haven't really been into it that long, explain to them what a veteran night is.
Sure, no problem. If you go into any Games Workshop store now and say, can I please play with my friend Bob over here? Not a problem. Here's a board, set up. You will have to play with the latest edition rules. Okay, you can't get around it because that's what they're selling at the moment. End of story. The Vets Nights they used to run, there's a lot of older gamers and older people as well. What I'd consider my age group. I'm in my mid-30s now. A lot of us would go there, and not only could you play old editions, but you could play their old games. Like a few of them I mentioned earlier on, like Man of War and Dark Future. If you ever get a chance to play Dark Future, just play it 'cause it's amazing. But all of those games that we could just take and just play, and you'd find at that time, a lot of the managers of the stores were also old gamers because they have to be gamers to work there anyway. But they were old gamers, and they used to really, really get a kick out of this kind of stuff. Most of the managers I know now have only played the hobby for a couple of years.
Yeah, because it was to a point where they wanted you to bring a portfolio when you applied, showing your, I think, 3,000 points worth of 40k and 3,000 points worth of Fantasy Warhammer, which, yes, that seems a bit extreme, but back in the day, that wasn't quite so much. But it also showed that you had a wide-ranging knowledge of the product because you had at least the two main core games, and it showed that you obviously had an interest not only in the games but also kind of in the company as well because you were invested in it.
Yeah, I always kind of got the idea they wasn't so much salesmen, but just they were. So it kind of weird. They weren't salesmen, but they were selling the product. In the fact that they knew so much about the product. Like a referee for football doesn't go out and try and sell FIFA tickets, does he? He doesn't go out and say, buy tickets for Liverpool. But he does know the game well enough that he can actually fully endorse and ref it at, when it happens.
Yeah.
And that's like the old-fashioned managers. The new ones, they don't seem to be so much the same.
Because obviously what you've got now is because they're trying to bring in these younger players and put them on tables. Are they even putting players on tables in stores anymore?
Bugger if I know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I walked in there and I see people painting, and I see the practice table set up, but I don't really see much in the way of players coming in to actually play. Because they used to do that. They used to put players in the game, sorry, in the store and put their own models on the table. I very rarely see this. To be honest, I'm going to see it even less now because I haven't been into a GW in a very long time. I think part of the reason is because of their practices, because of again coming back to price, it's over the top, but also again because of demographic. I walk into a GW and I feel out of place because I look around and there are people who are literally half my height.
Yeah,
I think what we do find is that we've got groups of, say, young people, young early teens coming in, and they're trying to kind of get into the game, they're trying to play it, and what you essentially have is you don't really have a manager of a shop anymore. It's almost like a glorified babysitter.
it is. Yeah, it does feel like, especially if you're a member of staff, you must feel like you are, an underpaid babysitter.
I mean, you can come in and come into work and you can set up all the models so you can get all the stock in, and then you have to deal with customers, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of parents come in and say, look, you just sit here, look at the models, have a play for a bit. We're going to go off and have lunch, and we'll be back for you in an hour. And
Yeah.
then essentially, I mean, I do kind of feel sorry for the people who are working there because it's like, well, it's like a very expensive creche where you can't you can't actually touch anything on the
I
shelves.
mean, they're getting into it because they really enjoy the hobby, and that's what they want, want to be. And you, like you're saying, you're getting these young people who are coming in as well, and the GW is normally the first port of call into this style of hobby.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are so many people that I know, especially when I was young. I mean, when I was like 15 or thereabouts, um, it was like, oh, will we play this game? I'm like, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. What kind of things do you like? Do you like blood? Do you like gore? I'm like, yeah, everyone loves blood and gore. I think, why don't you go for Chaos? I think Chaos was the first thing I ever played. Um, but, we're just going back to the beginning of what we said before. Someone knows someone else who's
Mm.
playing the game, and that's why they got into it. But
But that's how things are changing now as well. With the uprise, especially with like Marvel and DC films coming out a lot, comic stores are springing up all over the country, damn near on a weekly basis.
I mean, 'cause very over in the States, comics are a really big thing.
Yeah, they are. They're huge. I've been to the States, I've been to the stores, and my god, they're lovely. It's serious nerd orgasm when you walk in there, honest to God. But they're happening over here now. Now, yes, I suppose in some of the big cities, you can get away with just selling comics. But down our neck of the woods, down in the southwest, not quite so much. So you start expanding, and you naturally start expanding into things like Magic the Gathering.
Now, Magic the Gathering is one of those games that is very, very similar. I mean, I could spend an entire evening talking about Magic the Gathering. I'm, in fact, planning a video on Magic and basically what it was when I started back in the days of, say, Tempest and Masks and Urza's Legacy, and what it's kind of got to now, and essentially the mass change that it's gone through. But again, I could spend forever talking about that.
Yeah,
We'll
but
do that another time.
um, yeah. So like I was saying, like Magic, X-Wing is another big one. A lot of them do tend to sell some GW products as well, and a load of other games. What's happening is that on people's doorstep, variety is happening, and then people, young and old, are coming in. They're seeing what's to offer. Tables might as well get set up. There's no harm not to have a few tables, especially when you're playing something like X-Wing, because all you need to do is put down a 3x3 and a mat. If you wanted to buy a mat, it's about 30 quid, so it's not hugely expensive. Bam, down it goes. People are starting to play a lot of different games. It's not just solely one game anymore, and this is almost thanks to the comic craze. You know?
True enough. I mean, what with all these new movies coming out, there are young people now who are being exposed to these things that we had when we were that age. Now that with all the reboots and the modern day films, you're getting it's kind of like reliving our childhood to a degree,
It
but it's
is.
also giving new gamers that chance to really be a part of something.
Yeah, and I think everyone wants to be a part of something, don't
Everyone
they?
wants to be a part of a group. Everyone wants to feel like they fit in. It comes. I think it basically comes down to a sense of tribalism, really.
Yeah.
But what you've got is you have these demographics. You have people who are part of groups, and you basically you form little cultures. I mean, we consider ourselves geeks
Yeah, through and through.
through and through. Uh, but why? Is it because of the connotations that come with what we are, what we do?
Everyone's a geek. Let's be fair, just in different things. You think there's people that don't know every single footballer, and in Real Madrid at the moment aren't a geek? Yes, they are. They're just a geek in different ways. You think the people on the stock exchange aren't geeks? Of course they are. They just know exactly what anything's doing at any point in time. Fishermen know every single fish which sits in their sea. Everyone's a geek, but I suppose people are labelled in a different way.
So a geek essentially is someone who has an area of expertise.
Yeah, yeah. Which
And
most people contribute something to their life, can't they?
um, and I think for the classic geek, your area of expertise is entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay, so change is finally happening then. Attack Wing has now taken the top spot, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so Attack Wing has taken the top spot for tabletop role playing or tabletop gaming.
One thing we don't know if it's just taken over 40k or taken over everything that GW does. It just said that GW got knocked down to second. So we can only surmise it's all their products.
They're all their products as a whole.
Yeah.
So, but then again, on top of that, I mean, GW do have a lot of products, but are they still doing as much as they were? I mean, because they did throw a lot of their stuff under the bus. I know that they're still doing 40k, and I know that they're still technically doing Fantasy Warhammer, but I heard that they're not going to be having any more additions to the rules. Is that correct?
Don't know. All I know about it, since it turned into Age of Sigma, they've actually a funny story to be fair. Since they got knocked off the top spot, they've actually done something that I've never known GW ever to do before.
And what's that?
Listen to their players.
Now that's an interesting concept.
When Age of Sigmar came out, it was all about scenarios.
Yeah.
So it was okay to have 100 Bloodthirsters versus 100 Goblins. That was fair. That was legal, apparently. Now they've actually, people wanted points assigned to it. They wanted specific scenario and points aligned to it and all that kind of stuff. They listened and they've released the rules. One thing actually they did for Age of Sigmar, they released the rules for free.
Really?
They did. It was a pamphlet. It was like 2 or 3 pages long. It wasn't a lot, and the rules were very, very simplified. There's nothing wrong with simpler rules. Don't get me wrong, but I think they could have done a little bit more myself. But yeah, going back to what you're saying is that there's as far as I'm aware, the only thing out there at the moment is 40k Age of Sigmar, which if it does have any more updates or not, I don't know. Who does know? There is, I think, The Hobbit's still going.
I thought The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings was still going.
I don't think it's ever been hugely successful though, is it?
It's been this thing that I think they've tried to push a lot. They've kept it on their shelves. It's always been there like there's always been like a table set up. Every time I walked into a GW, there's always been a table set up for The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings or whatever its franchise name is at the moment. And I'm never drawn to it.
I can never get on with it. The rules are very, very, very simple. The element of building is gone. If that makes sense. I feel that you can win if you just chuck enough stuff on the table.
Yeah, there is that. I think also if you want a product to do well, you need to be invested in it to the point where you need to be concentrating on your rules. You need to make things that are not balanced but appealing. When you start to take into consideration things like your positioning in terrain and stuff like they have with their other games, that's when your rules start to shine.
Yeah.
We'll take role playing for an example. Now, I've been a role player for a long time, and obviously much of my channel is very role playing dedicated. But there's one thing I find: I try not to put my players into situations where they are just going toe to toe on a flat battlefield.
It gets dull.
It does get very, very dull. I've had scenarios where people are literally leaping from platform to platform where they're trying to rescue people during combat. They're trying to say fight even on like a narrow ledge, and you have like an impending fall. It just adds this level of excitement. And I think if you are looking at a tabletop game, you need to really concentrate so much on the environment in your rules as you do as the individual models on the rules, because these environmental things make very exciting scenarios.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, they had like a lot of stuff around when it comes to terrain and all. But I mean, I only played The Hobbit a few times, well, Lord of the Rings back then, and it was years ago. But that was to my knowledge of just how poor I believe the system to be. But in saying that, I've got an idea for a new video. We can actually do one on stupid things players have done to derail GM's games.
Okay, well that's something
I'll
we
sit
can.
in with you on that one because that'll be hilarious.
To be honest, I really like the way tonight has gone. Everyone seems to be really engaged. There's a lot of passion on the subject, and it would be great to have you on the show again for more input because I think the listeners will really like to hear your opinion.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
It really has been good having you. So all right, so let's just summarize and just kind of wrap up. We've got the kind of downfall of GW. They've basically kind of shot themselves in the foot. They've taken all of their best kind of stuff and really kind of thrown it under the bus, especially their kind of budget gaming. They've really kind of tried to monopolize. They've really upped their prices. They've really kind of tried to get more kids in, and they've tried to really make it as friendly for everyone as they can, rather than trying to target a specific audience.
See, when you state it like that, it makes it sound like they're doing everything right. And I suppose in some senses they actually are.
From a business perspective, yes, I totally agree that they are technically doing everything right. However, the lay person, the person that plays the game, is not a businessman.
No. And it's like one of those things, isn't it? It's like if you own and run a pub, you don't annoy your regulars who are your bread and butter 52 weeks a year just to have, say for instance, a massive do in one night, you know?
Yeah,
It's gonna make you a few £100, don't get me wrong. But you've then annoyed too many people and they won't bother come back. Maybe this is the way, this is what's happened with GW.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of annoying, it wasn't maybe all that long ago. I think it was April 1st, wasn't it? They did this thing where they uploaded a joke on Facebook, and it was essentially a pop up book.
It was a pop-up book.
It was a pop up book, and they were saying, "Well, this is the new pop up book. What was it, 40 quid or whatever?"
Yeah. It was far too much for what it was. That's
Yeah,
for sure,
it's far too much for what it was, and obviously it was a joke. But however, I don't think everyone got the joke.
No, they didn't.
I think some people actually took it as seriously, and I almost look at it as the straw that broke the camel's back. When people saw that, because when you come to something like a company like that, or even just anything, you are instantly in a certain frame of mind because you already feel a certain way about it based on your experience. So when that popped up, sorry, bad pun, but when that popped up, I think people looked at it and it's just like, you know what, GW, you've finally done it. All right, you have finally released this crap. People didn't realise it was a joke.
I didn't. I saw so much April Fool stuff that day, and when I saw that, I just looked and went, "Oh, okay," and carried on flicking through. It didn't even occur to me that that is what they were trying to do. And in fairness, they were taking the piss out of themselves, and I will respect them for that. But boom. I can't really explain it.
I personally feel it might have
Expect
backfired quite a bit because I think there are a lot of people looked at it and just went, I'm done with you now. I really am. I'm done with you now.
Which is a massive shame. I mean, because of everything GW is, they do have a good history and they do have a very good story and they can make a very, very playable game. God, I've done it for years. But I won't ever carry on playing the game that they've got there now. And I won't pay the price they got there now. I want them, and in my heart of hearts, I want them to turn themselves around, look at themselves, dust them off, reduce their prices, get things back into the game which was in there before, and stop with the bullshit.
Yeah, I think that's basically what all the players are turning around. I mean, you've got a group that you play with, don't you? And many of them have said, look, I really don't have the energy. It's kind of sapped their will almost.
Yeah, I only know a couple of people now that play on a regular basis.
Yeah. So essentially what you've got now is you've got people who are consigning not just a squad to the shelves, but entire armies. Entire armies are being consigned to the shelf.
It's a terrible shame.
It is a terrible shame because there are some fantastic painters out there, there's fantastic modelers out there, and they're just not showcasing their talents, and they're not showcasing their general strategy either. They have, there are great gamers, there are great painters, there are great, model builders, and we're just not really seeing it around, in our local groups because people aren't playing it anymore.
No, I've known. Again, a friend of ours actually, he did a 40k night every Friday, and he stopped going because they all started playing X-Wing.
And again, like you said, X-wing attack wing has taken the top spot, and people like it. They like it because it's balanced. They like it because you don't have to spend loads of money on it. They like it because you can play it in a couple of hours. It's quick to pick up. It's quick to play. The rules are simple. It appeals to so many people, like adults, not just to kids. It you can pick it up and put it away very easily. You don't have to make room for an entire fleet or squadron, and it just seems like it's going to be such a good game, and I think it's really in direct opposition to GW and its practices, and I think that's why it's taken the top spot.
Yeah, but it's nothing GW couldn't possibly follow.